In this presentation, you're going to get some great advice on how you can use ISO 27001 and its Annex A, to help you protect your information in your business. Hello and welcome to our ongoing series of business improvement presentations presented by Mango. My name's Craig Thornton and I host these sessions on all things to do with business improvement, compliance and QHSE. So today I've got my colleague Nathan to help explain how Mango used Annex A of ISO 27001 to protect its information from vulnerabilities and threats. If you want to contact us and ask us any questions, then just contact us through our email there, and hopefully we'll answer those questions for you. We've also got a free giveaway for you as well. So we're going to be talking about Annex A mostly in this presentation, but all the clauses from clauses 4 to clauses 10. If you want to know more details about that, then download this ultimate guide to the ISO 27001 standard that I wrote last year. That can be found on our website. So if you just go to mangolive.com/resources or click on the tab at the top of the page called resources. Under there, there's a filter called types. So click on that, click on the eBook, and it's one of the free ebooks you can get there. So if you click on that, you'll see a link so that you don't need to give me your email or anything like that. It's just a free download. Before we get into the annex, just to explain the ISO 27001. ISO 27001 is a little bit more than what you expect. It is actually ISO 27001, which is clauses 4 to 10, plus it has an annex, or Annex A, which lists 108 controls, which we will talk about today in this presentation. And these are the clauses we're going to go through. So we'll go from 5 down to 18 and go into a little bit of detail about each of those. And I'll explain the objectives of each of them. And then we'll give you some examples of how Mango achieved that and how maybe you could achieve that inside of your business. A5 of Annex A. So the objective there is to provide management direction and support for information security in accordance with business requirements and relevant laws and regulations. So what does that actually mean in practice? So I've taken an example here from us. So we wrote up an information security policy and included in that. There are other things in the policy I haven't shared here, but the main part of that is that we are committed to meeting all current legislation as well as a variety of regulatory and contractual requirements. We're continually improving our information security management system, meaning we continually review it and update it. And we are committed to meeting the security needs and expectations of our interested parties. So we've got a whole bunch of interested parties, including customers, suppliers, and other interested parties. So Nathan, have you got anything there that's extra that you could?
Yeah, so one of the key things here is communicating those policies to your employees as well. So within Mango, you would keep the policy within the documents module and control it within there. And you would capture the training records through the HR module. But it's important that you're capturing that your employees are being communicated to with the policy information. And it's also a good idea maybe to put some visual items up, maybe some posters or some sort of visual cues to show that it's an important thing for the organisation. You know, why are we doing information security? Why are we looking at 27001? So yeah, posters, reminders. In New Zealand, you've got 13Z reminders that come through. Anything visual like that you can share with your team just to get them on board and get them understanding what you're trying to achieve.
A6, which is the Organisation of Information Security. So there's a couple of objectives here. First one is to establish a management framework to initiate and control the implementation and operation of information security within the organisation. And secondly, to ensure the security of teleworking and the use of mobile devices. So a couple of objectives there. So what did we do at Mango? So we updated our individual employment agreement and got the staff to to agree to and re-sign those employment agreements. So we tightened up a whole lot of information security in those documents. We also updated everyone's job descriptions just to make it clear what their responsibilities are around information security. We then developed a mobile device use policy and remote working or working from home type policy. So we did some reasonably straightforward things. We got help from our lawyers as well. So Nathan, you got any other examples of part of this A6?
Yeah, so the latter two, the mobile device and the remote working, is covered in other annexes as well. But the key things to consider here is, if my mobile device is lost, left in a taxi, stolen, what controls have I got around protecting our information? And also, if people are working off-site, and we've especially seen this through COVID, is do the people at home have the same level of security and access that they need in order to function? And in a nutshell, it's about keeping the key stakeholders up to date with what's going on. And that can be captured within Mango in the HR module, especially around those employment agreements and job descriptions, that kind of side of it. The HR module is ideal for that.
Okay, so the next one sort of ties in nicely, which is around HR or human resource security. So there's three objectives here. So firstly, prior to employment, ensure that employees and contractors understand their responsibilities and are suitable for the roles for which they're being considered. So that's the first objective. Secondly is to ensure that employees and contractors are aware of and fulfill their information security responsibilities. So that's while they're doing the job or during their employment. And then at termination or change of employment, to protect the organisation's interests as part of the process of changing or terminating employment. So here at Mango, we tightened up our recruitment processes, particularly around screening employees and looking at, what sort of criteria we're going to assess people during the screening of the people that are applying for the roles. Once we looked deeper into maybe during their employment or early employment, we looked at and have installed in police checks as well. So we check that. We've tightened up our induction processes and put a whole lot of effort around that, and Nathan can maybe explain that a little bit more. And then we really tightened up our termination processes and maybe the change in employment as well around that. So do you want to give a bit more detail about that, Nathan?
So when we come to induction, it's with your new employees or changing role employees. It's too late if you leave it down the track to start talking about information security with these people. As soon as they start with the business, they're being exposed to information that may be sensitive in nature, and we're trying to protect that. So the induction process is the ideal time to inform these people that you've got a process, why that process is in place, and what they can do to help manage that process, whether it's from reporting issues or just the way that they're behaving. A couple of things is, around your part-time or casual employees, don't forget about them in this induction or onboarding process, because they're just as much of a potential risk as anybody, and they are quite often overlooked because they're not around necessarily at the time that the rest of the employees are going through the training for information security, and so they may get missed and therefore become a bigger risk. The other thing you can do within this module is just look out for any unusual activity. So you've done your police checks, you've had your screening in place, but if someone suddenly starts acting a little bit differently, just monitor, be mindful of that it might be leading to something else.
Okay, so the next one is asset management. So there's three control objectives there. So in terms of the responsibilities for assets, the objective is to identify organisational assets and define appropriate protection responsibilities. The next one is around classification. So to ensure that information receives an appropriate level of protection in accordance with the importance of the organisation. So you classify the information to ensure that it's properly protected. And finally, 3, to prevent unauthorized disclosure, modifications, removal, or destruction of information stored on media. So, so here at Mango, we created an asset register. So we went through a bit of a process here. It took a while, but we created an asset register of all our equipment, all our software, all the information that we, including whiteboards and posters and things like that. We then went through a classification process to classify them. We labeled everything, and then we looked at how we handle and disposed media, including SD cards, USBs, server disks, things like that. So a whole lot of management around your physical and information assets. So Nathan, do you want to give a bit more detail around some of that?
Yeah, so for us around the classification, that involved, is this information secret? So it's the highest level of security, through to is it public and stuff that we're able to make available for other people. It's really important to consider not just physical assets, but also software assets and anything that can show or display information. Hence why we sort of included things like whiteboards, because you can write things on whiteboards and people can inadvertently see them who maybe shouldn't be looking at that information. So you just got to be mindful of that as well. As far as Mango goes, we capture the assets in the plant and equipment module, and we put a classification. We set up a risk template and did the risk assessment on those assets through the risk module. And when it comes to disposing of equipment, such as hard drives or anything like that, obviously there's a risk there. So in order to manage that process, we'll raise an improvement so that it's going to the correct people to get disposed of and the correct process is taking place.
Then the next one is A9, access control. This is a biggie. So there's There's 7 different objectives here. So the first one is to limit access of the information and information processing facilities. Secondly, ensure authorized user access and prevent unauthorized access to systems and services. Thirdly, make users accountable for safeguarding their authentication information. Fourthly, prevent unauthorized access to systems and applications, which is around, so that's around passwords. So for here at Mango, we went through all our networks and looked at the controls that we've got on all our networks, our services, including utilities, power and whatnot. We looked at all the privileges that everybody's got for the information that they need to be able to do their job. For those products that we felt 2-factor authentication was necessary, we implemented that. Those passwords that people use, they needed to be complex passwords as best they can with phrases or whatever's best for them. And then we put special processes around our source code because we are a software development company. So special privileges and access around source code. So those are the types of things that we looked at for A9 access control. So Nathan, you got anything?
Sure. So the other things to consider are, things like your services, your power, your phone, your internet. Are they able to let you down in some way with your security? So are people able to plug their device into your network connection and access your network, or is there some protections in there? As a whole, it should be a principle of least privilege. So you should only be giving people access to things that they actually need to have access to. Quite often, people will say, "Oh, I'll just give you full access so you can see the whole system or see the whole lot of employees." If they don't need to see all that information, then you actually give them more than what they need, and that can lead to issues in itself. On the other side of it, you also need to check whether there's any barriers to people doing their job. So you don't want to stop someone doing their job by not giving them the appropriate access rights. So one way of managing that we use is discussing this in our management review meetings. So we always check whether the employees have got any barriers around access that are preventing them from doing things, and whether they've come across anything that they maybe think they shouldn't have. Within Mango, the software itself, you can use access profiles to help you manage that, and you can apply further restrictions on what people can see, just to keep that information a little more secure.
Okay, so the next one, A10, is around cryptography. So the one objective here is to ensure proper and effective use of cryptography to protect confidentiality, authenticity, and integrity of the information. So for us in Mangoland, particularly for our software development, we use keys and key management, and we also have encryption and decryption as well. So we've got strong processes around that, and only very senior developers in the company actually look after that. So very few people know the processes around encryption and decryption. You've got anything else, Nathan, in that?
Yeah, this side of it is not an area that I'm particularly skilled in. So it's where your IT department really comes into their own. They'll know about cryptography. They'll be able to advise you what they're doing and how they can help protect the transmission of your data.
Okay, so A11, physical and environmental security, secure areas. So the objective around that is to prevent unauthorized physical access, damage, and interference to the organization's information and information processing facilities. So security around those secure areas. And then secondly, to prevent loss, damage, theft, or compromise of assets and interruption to the organization's operations. So for us here at Mango, you know, we're on a physical location. We've actually got two offices, one above each other. So there's like a boundary there with alarms and PIN codes on those alarms. So you need to think about that for your organization. What sort of boundary do you have and what protection do you have around that? Then when you're looking at your equipment, what maintenance, cabling and utilities, there's security around that, which we've covered off previously, but it also involves this clause. And also there's a section there on making sure you've got a clean desk and clean whiteboard. So our policy here is we have clean desks. So at the end of the day, people should be removing any confidential information from their desks and either shredding it or disposing of it appropriately. So Nathan, you've got more information here.
Yeah, so obviously we've been talking a lot about the data and that sort of security, but physical locations, you know, getting access to a location is also covered through here. So, you know, as Craig said, things like alarms and locks. The thing with alarms and locks is how do you know whether they're actually working or not? So you've got to make sure that you're testing them on a regular basis, making sure the right alerts are coming through to the right people. And if you're using the Mango software, you can use the events module to prompt when that sort of thing needs to happen. It's also around employee awareness of who should be on site. I know in manufacturing plants that I've worked in before, it's quite easy to sort of truck and trailer into a company premises just by following the car that's in front of you. So you know, just around, and then obviously they're in your site and they can access physical or data that's available. So being aware about who should be on site and protecting their unattended equipment if, you know, if maybe it's sitting in a loading bay or something like that.
A12, operations security. So there's about 7 different objectives here. So first objective is to ensure correct and secure operations of information processing facilities. Secondly, to ensure that information and information processing facilities are protected against malware. Next one is to protect against loss of data. That's through backup. Next objective is to record events and generate evidence. So that's around logging. The next one's to ensure the integrity of operational systems. Next one is to prevent exploitation of technical vulnerabilities. And finally, to minimise the impact of audit activities. So when you're doing audits, you've got to make sure that those audits don't affect your operational systems. So in Mango Land, we put a lot of effort around this, particularly around patching, making sure all our servers and all our devices are all patched accordingly. We've got good malware protection. Our backups are in place, and we check to make sure the backups are done. We've got plenty of logs in place. How do we protect ourselves against the two biggest threats that are happening in New Zealand at the moment, which are phishing and credential harvesting? So that's through mainly through email and making sure people don't click on silly links and suddenly you're unprotected there, and you're getting silly phone calls and whatnot. So those are sorts of the things that we look at in terms of our operational security. Nathan, how do we sort of do that in practice?
Yeah, so this area is all about avoiding disruption. So you don't want to be hacked and lose your ability to function for a period of time. So we do things like reviewing our logs for activity that may not be what we expect. And as far as the backups, we have a schedule on backups, as well as those that are forwarded to us. And that sort of thing is reviewed and kept up to date via the management review meeting. So we discuss those things. We discuss about the backups. We discuss with all the team about the risk of clicking onto unsolicited emails, especially those that have got links inside them. So again, it's coming back to that communication with teams, but also the technical aspect of how you manage your malware and your backups.
A13, so this is around communication security, and there's a couple of objectives here. Firstly is to ensure the protection of information in networks and its supporting information processing facilities. And the next objective is to maintain the security information transferred within an organisation and with an external entity. So we've got some tight controls around our network security. I can't give you a lot of details about that. But,
for information security reasons.
And transferring data, using encrypted services to be able to do that. We also manage that as well. But the important thing really is communication, team communication. So we use external providers like Microsoft Azure to manage our and host our servers for us for Mango. And so we've got good network security around that, and good communication with them to make sure that everything is operating and there's no holes. So have you got anything in particular there, Nathan?
Yeah, so again, this brings in the human aspect and communication within teams. So we have closed circuit, if you like, communication devices through here, so that no one can access from outside of Mango. So you have to actually be an employee to use that method of communication. It's also around confidentiality agreements. So you're going to discuss things with suppliers or employees as a matter, of course, of that relationship. So it's important that they don't then communicate that information off to others. So that's where the confidentiality agreements come in. And also around email guidelines, who are you communicating with? How are you communicating with them? Are you providing any link back into your organisation that you may not be wanting? Avoid putting links in because there's a good chance that they won't be delivered, or even the tone and the information that's given on emails.
Very good. Okay, so the next clause, A14, system acquisition, development and maintenance. So the three objectives here is firstly is to ensure that information security is an integral part of the information systems across the entire life cycle. This also includes requirements for information systems which provide services over public networks. So that's the first objective. Secondly is to ensure that information security is designed, implemented within the development lifecycle of information systems. And thirdly, to ensure the protection of data used for testing. So this is very critical for us because we are actually a software development company. So not only do we have our own networks that we have to design, develop and test, we also have Mango that we design, develop and test. So we've sort of got two areas we've got to cover off in this particular clause. So when we get audited, the auditors keep a very close tab on this. So, you know, we've got purchasing processes around how we acquire things and then how we then put those and implement them into our network. We've got design and development processes, not just for our network, but also for Mango itself. So we've got some strict design and development processes around that, making sure that the customers' requirements are fulfilled, but also the information security around that is fulfilled. So we write information security into our requirements documents right up front, and then we test them at the end. And then when we're doing support, which Nathan looks after, he'll give you a bit more detail around some of the information security things there, because we are supporting Mango and have access to some customer information there. So we've got to put some really strict guidelines around how do we actually support customers' information when we can actually see some of their information. So Nathan, you got any more on this particular one? This is an important one for us.
Yeah, it certainly is. So when we're acquiring a new piece of equipment, and we include software as being new equipment, we obviously need to know if that's going to bring any vulnerabilities with it. So we use an improvement within Mango to manage that process of onboarding the equipment. We do a risk assessment on it to see what those risks of business are. And if we are going to do some maintenance on it, we use the maintenance request module to make sure that we're not letting any information out as part of that maintenance. Within Mango itself, though, whenever we are looking at bringing new enhancements or changing things within the Mango software itself, considering how that data is used and accessed is a huge part of it. And that's, as Craig said, right from the writing of what we want to achieve, right through the testing of it. So that's a huge part of that whole process. I won't go into it in too much depth. But when it comes to support, we gain access to client data for helping them, for supporting a query that they've got. One thing that we do sometimes have is people sharing too much information with us, such as maybe access information. So it's really important for us that we capture if we're told that sort of thing, and that we're telling people to reset their passwords or anything like that if they share that sort of stuff with us. So obviously we only gain information, we only look at the information to help a client at the time. It's not something that we're looking at otherwise. But yeah, obviously we don't, it needs to stop with us. We can't share that information with anyone else because it wouldn't be appropriate to do so. Similarly, some organisations might have consultants that they want to help run their processes, and they want to talk to us. We're not going to talk to a third party unless we've got that level of authorisation to do that. So it's really, really important that we maintain the security of our clients' data.
Okay, so the next one, A15, supplier relationships. So the objective around supplier relationships is to ensure protection of the organisation's assets that are accessible by suppliers. Secondly, to maintain an agreed level of information security and service delivery in line with supplier agreements. So here at Mango, we monitor our contractors' performance monthly as part of our management review. We also have annual supplier reviews, and you also need to consider how you talk with and engage with lawyers and accountants as well, because they're looking at some of your information for you and maybe doing a bit of work for you around that. So just how do you protect yourself to ensure any data there is not lost or there's some vulnerabilities of losing data there. So have you got anything more on that, Nathan?
Yeah, so when it comes to suppliers, your agreements ideally are relevant to the risk that supplier might expose to your organisation. So you might have some sort of pre-assessment of that supplier. There's an assessment module within Mango to help you with that. And that's getting information from them to see if you want to work with them for a start. Assuming you want to work with them and you start that relationship, then you want to review on a regular basis that they're actually still performing the way you want them to, and you might do an audit on them. There's an audit module inside Mango to review, make sure that they're still performing the way that you want.
The next one is around incident management. So the objective here is to ensure a consistent and effective approach to the management of information security incidents, including communication on security events and weaknesses. So here in Mango Land, this is all about incident reporting and then managing the corrective and preventive actions that flow from that and reviewing that and making sure that you learn from those things and prevent them from happening again. So Nathan, you got any special examples there from Mango Land?
Yeah, again, this comes down to training and capturing information from your employees and your teams. So in a similar way that we would encourage employees to tell us about any safety accidents or incidents, or maybe some near misses, we want to encourage them to help us manage our information security as well by telling us if they're aware of any issues that are coming through. Maybe they've received an unsolicited email. Maybe they've sent an email to a wrong place. They just need to, put their hand up and say, yes, we need to deal with that. New Zealand's got some new laws around this that says that if the breach was likely to cause significant harm to anybody, that you need to notify it. So that's coming now. So it's all about encouraging people to report incidents of a security nature. Within Mango, there's a new security incident module to help you manage that process. But yeah, you've got to encourage your team to actually tell you when things are happening.
The next one is around business continuity. So the objective here is information security continuity shall be embedded in the organization's business continuity management systems. And secondly, to ensure availability of information processing facilities for redundancy processes. So for us here at Mango Land, we updated our business continuity plan. We've obviously we're based here in Christchurch in New Zealand, so we've been through a lot of business continuity events, including earthquakes and whatnot, and COVID as well. So we, as part of our 27001 certification, we really focused in on this clause and updated our business continuity plans and put in some emergency type events so that we would test those to see what would happen in case of a crisis or a disaster. Anything else there, Nathan? Anything?
Yeah, so it's one thing having a business continuity plan. It's another one actually implementing it and testing it. So testing is really the key. As Craig said, unfortunately in Christchurch here, we've had a number of events that have meant that we needed to test the system. But when that occurs, actually step through it and take learnings from it as well, because every time we have either a test or an enforced test, we're always tweaking things because maybe this part didn't work so well, and maybe this part worked really well. So do that review to see how you can update your continuity plan so that next time it's even smoother than this time.
Yeah, which sort of just one more thing, for our product Mango sits on some servers in Microsoft Azure, We also have sort of mirrored servers there, so that if one goes down, the other one kicks off straight away. So there's some redundancy there. The next one is, and the final one, is the compliance clause. So a couple of objectives here. First one is to avoid breaches of legal, statutory, regulatory, or contractual obligations related to information security and any security requirements. And secondly, to ensure that information security is implemented and operated in accordance with our policies and procedures. So for us, we captured all of our legal requirements in a legal register and other requirements as we saw fit in the as a compliance register. We listed all of the controls that we've talked through today, and we say how we actually meet those, what policies we've got, what procedures we've got, what evidence we capture, and we have audit processes and reviews to make sure that we continually meet that. So have you got anything else on compliance, Nathan?
Yeah, so you pretty much covered it there, but so we used our compliance module to capture them by clause, and then we used the audits and the structure of the audits matches the annex. So we can go through and say, is this in place? Is it documented? Is it being followed? So it's one thing having the compliance, not identifying what it is that you need to meet, but you need to then be reviewing it to make sure you are actually consistently meeting it. And nothing's changed in the last 6, 12 months kind of thing. So yeah, doing an audit, doing some sort of review based on the annex is a good way of structuring it. Okay,
so that's the end of Annex A. Hopefully you've got a good or a better understanding of each of those clauses, their objectives, and maybe some examples